it makes it easier to walk away from those things because I can stop and have impulse control and think to myself, do I really want to spend $100 on this stuff? Or do I want to put $100 away in my high yield savings account for the girls' trip that we're going to have in 6 months? That really means more. And that moves up that baseline level of happiness. When we're talking about aligning our priorities and everything, it boils down to practice and really knowing what it means for you. Because I could have listed all of those things and you could be like, none of that resonates for me. I actually only am solely focused on getting my Louis Vuitton purse. And I'm like, great. My job is never going to be to tell you what to buy. It's going to be to teach you how to buy things in an intentional and values-based way.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Nourished Inside Out. I am here with Lindsey today, and she is a financial therapist. Thank you for joining us today, Lindsey.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Do you mind telling us a little bit about your background and what being a financial therapist looks like?
Yeah, totally. I am first and foremost a licensed therapist. I became a therapist in 2019. And I, at that time, was working at a clinic, and my work really looked totally different than it does now. But in 2022, I went to a personal development conference, and I had this moment where I really decided that I wanted to help people with their money. I just had this instinctual feeling like that's really what I wanted. But I knew as a therapist, I had this inner conflict. Like, who is going to listen to me? All the things, all the imposter syndrome things came up. And fast forward 6 months later, I was listening to an audiobook and in my car, though totally unrelated to therapy and to money or anything like that. But the author said the words financial therapist. And I literally paused the book. I was on my street, pulled into my driveway, ran inside. My husband was like, what's happening? Are you okay? And I was like, I need to Google something right now. And I literally looked up the word financial therapist. And as it turns out, because I'm a licensed therapist, I have my MSW, I qualified for this certification program. And we have a 48-hour rule in our house. So I did not do this impulsively, but I really just knew, like, innately, this is right for me. And I did. I took the certification program and became certified as a financial therapist. And it really helped me start my business and able to merge, that traditional behavioral therapy, getting to the root cause of issues, things like that, and provide people with financial education. And so that is simply what I do.
I think that's really cool how you're able to tie the two together. It's cool because we start this journey of thinking we know what we want. And then as we're going down the journey, it becomes to expand. And it just takes us down a path that we would never think about. It's really cool. How does financial therapy differ from traditional therapy or even financial advising?
Yeah, good question. I am a solution-focused brief therapist. So I am very action-oriented. I am very, let's lay the groundwork and start doing the thing. So while I address how you grew up around money and what your money messages might be and those money scripts that we are telling ourselves, whether consciously or unconsciously, all of that is really important. But I don't sit in the past very long. We might talk about it, recognize patterns and how it's presenting now in your current life. But I don't do like deep inner child work. I'm not doing like EMDR. Like, I'm not doing different like forms of therapy that way. And instead, I'm very action focused. I'm very solutions focused. And my work with you should not be 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, like some therapy or therapeutic relationships are. I'm like, let's see each other weekly for the first 4 weeks, then maybe bi-weekly for a couple months, then monthly. And then I'm going to let you spread your wings and fly and know that my door is always open as you need me. Your money journey is a lifelong endeavor. It never ends. And so as adjustments need to be made, you're reaching some of your bigger goals, or you want to tone back and work less hours, and we can then work on changing those dials accordingly. That's how I differ from traditional therapy, if you will. On the other side, there's financial planning. I differ from that one because I put a lot of the emotional aspects and the behavioral aspects into money, where a traditional financial planner is very logical. This is what the spreadsheet tells you to do, and this is how you have to do it, right? But also the way they charge you, most financial advisors, their fee structures are quite predatory, and I frankly find them unethical because they charge what's called an AUM, which stands for assets under management. Often they're looking at your portfolio, your investment portfolio, and whatever, and they will say that they are managing your funds, and for managing those funds, you need to pay them a fee. And often that fee looks like 1%, maybe 2%, which sounds really minor. But over the course of your lifetime, it ends up equating to nearly or more than 28% of your overall portfolio. So I'm kind of throwing out a lot of numbers. This is kind of advanced stuff, but I say that to educate people around, one, you can invest on your own. You don't need somebody, quote unquote, managing your portfolio when really they're not typically doing a whole lot. And I, in my heart of hearts, believe in full price transparency. And if you do not know what your financial advisor is charging you, that is crazy and unlike any other thing ever, right? Like you would never go to a coffee shop and not know how much you're paying for your latte. Same with your money. You should not be paying somebody that you actually don't know what they're paying. So if you do want to work with somebody like that, make sure it's an hourly fee. That is how I operate. Is I'm hourly, you know exactly what you're being charged. We make a plan together, and then again, my door's open as needed. So a long-winded way of saying I'm kind of a happy medium between the two.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. Can you explain to us how our emotional relationship with money can impact our financial decisions?
Oh, yeah. I mean, this goes so deep. There's a couple different ways to think about it. One is we often find that we are spending impulsively, right? We're not putting a lot of thought and intention into our spending habits. And what that impulsivity really looks like is I'm had a long day at the office or with my partner or my kids or whatever that looks like, and you're curled up on the couch and your thumbs kind of drift to an app. It might be Amazon, it might be TikTok, it might be Instagram, it might be whatever those are. But any of them are, at the end of the day, they are marketing to you, right? And so we find ourselves on Talk Shop. And really, what this boils down to is we're on those apps to be distracted. We are feeling bored, so we want to be entertained. All of these are emotionally driven. And what happens is we're often looking for something that is going to make us feel that quick hit of dopamine. We want to feel good, and buying shit feels good. I think it's really important to start recognizing some of those habits, some of those patterns. And that's just one example of many. There's positive emotions, obviously, associated with money as well. And I like to talk about putting gratitude back into your spending. A lot of people complain about paying for their mortgage or for their rent or whatever. What if we reframed that and we actually felt really excited that we got to put a roof over our heads and we pay for that roof over our heads, and that's okay, right? And so thinking about money that way, there's so many tips and tricks that we can talk about and that you can do to really make sure that your emotions are not maybe getting the better of you and buying things that aren't really moving up that baseline level of happiness.
Yeah, thank you for sharing those. What are some common money related issues that people tend to bring to financial therapy?
I would say the number one issue I often see, particularly with women when I'm doing my individual work with women, is avoidance. For so long, money has been taboo. We are not supposed to talk about it. It probably wasn't talked about in your house, or if it was, perhaps it was fought about. You didn't learn about it in school, right? There's just not a lot of financial education that really took place. And so now it's become this big, scary, overwhelming, intimidating thing. And so we just like to avoid it. So I would say that's probably the most common thing that I see is people just really needing to start understanding how money works, why their habits are the way they are, and really to stop avoiding money in general. On the flip side, I also do couples work and I work with couples on their money. And I often hear them say, we just want to be on the same page with money. There's a lot of conflict or arguments or friction around how they're approaching money, making purchasing decisions, who wants to save, who wants to spend. And they just want to feel like they are on the same team. And in order to do that, they need to do some money work. And so that's typical with couples.
That makes sense. How can financial stress impact mental health, and what strategies do you typically recommend for when you're working with couples to manage it?
Really, what I talk at length about and what my podcast is called financial self-care, right? Because on the other side of the coin of financial self-care is then financial stress. We know that financial stress impacts your emotional health, your physical health, your relational health. And I mean, there's so much data to support this, right? Like 72% of Americans report feeling stressed every single day about their money. That's according to the American Psychological Association. Another study has come to say that 90% of individuals are feeling stressed about money every single day. So there's just a lot of data to support that financial stress is really impacting. We start seeing symptoms of anxiety. We start seeing symptoms of depression. People with debt are 2/3 as likely as those without to be experiencing depressive symptoms. So, like, this is very heavy stuff. It really runs deep. I practice whole body wellness, right? So, like, your finances cannot be siloed over here on their own little island while you're trying to take care of the rest of yourself. It has to be incorporated because everything is interconnected. So, when we start thinking about it that way, we start to see like, oh, I've done a lot of healing or I've done a lot of work to improve myself, which amazing, but I've managed to keep my finances separate, right? So if we can start bringing that in and understand that every single goal that you have for yourself also has a financial component to it, then we can start understanding how our money is really going to support us in our overall wellness journey.
Going back to your previous answer, something that I really liked what you said is having gratitude for it. When people are not happy about paying a mortgage or rent, but when you tie in gratitude with it, I think it also makes you look at it from a more positive perspective as well. Like, I'm thankful that I get to pay my rent. I'm thankful that I get to pay my mortgage. And I think that can also help ease out some stress as well, don't you think?
Oh, 100%. One of the activities that I often end up doing with my clients is when we're talking about spending, right? Spending money is a skill that we need to develop well. And so, one thing I like to do with them is start just a note on your phone. So, I mean, we have our phones all the time. It's just the life that we live, right? Start a note in there and every day write down 2 things that you are really specifically thankful for. The example I often give is my electric toothbrush. I love brushing my teeth with my electric toothbrush. It makes me feel so happy. My teeth feel so clean. And a regular toothbrush is just never going to compare at this point. It just is. But I write that down on my gratitude list. I genuinely feel so happy when I get to brush my teeth. If we start kind of doing that, where you're looking around your house or in your environment as a whole, and you start plucking out the things that you are so grateful for and so excited that you get to use or have or do every single day, then it becomes this fun. It takes about like 3 weeks, but you come into this place where you're all of a sudden looking for things that you get to add to your list the next day. And it's this really beautiful way to walk through life of like, what a fun thing to like look for things that you are grateful for, right? I remember specifically this like moment happening for me where it sounds really lame, but there's this beautiful tree near my in-laws' house and they wrap it super tight with Christmas lights, like all the way up this giant tree into like the tiny little branches. And it is stunning. And I saw it on my drive and I remember thinking like, ooh, I can't wait to add that to my gratitude list tomorrow. And thinking like just having that moment of like, oh my gosh, what a cool thing that I get to like literally look for things that excite me instead of dwelling on the things that I don't have and bringing to light that like restriction or deprivation that people often associate with money and budgeting and planning and all of that. There's ways that we can incorporate moments of gratitude and thankfulness and to be really happy and excited about the things that we have, which then in turn make us not feel like we are deprived.
That's so true. A moment of gratitude can go such a long way. I love how you said that. So, what role does childhood or a family upbringing play in shaping our financial habits and beliefs?
This is one of my favorite things to talk about because I think it is one of those like shocking, staggering statistics that's out there. But there is a lot of research to support the fact that your money habits are established by the time you are 10 years old. There is a study out of the University of Michigan that literally studied kids from ages 5 up past just past 10 and to see what tendencies they have and where their emotional beliefs lie and how they actually put, money to the test of if they're going to save more likely or if they're spending more likely. And where do we think that these money habits come from? Obvious answer, how we grew up, what we were told and taught about money. So if your parents never taught you anything, or they thought about money all the time, or whatever, then you're going to carry that into your adulthood and you're going to internalize these beliefs. The beautiful thing about my work is habits can be changed. So if you're hearing that stat and you're like, oh my gosh, I am doomed, like this is the worst, okay, maybe feel your feels, girl, but also let's be realistic in that like any of your habits can be changed. It takes hard work, but we can do it. Having that hope and that level of, oh my gosh, now I realize that maybe the mistakes that I've been making or the avoidance that I've been having isn't totally my fault, but there's something that I can do to change it and get better with my money so I can actually get better about taking care of myself. What a beautiful thing.
What are some steps that someone can take to identify and reframe unhealthy money mindsets, especially if it's something that they were taught of unhealthy money mindsets?
Well, first and foremost, I really do believe that having support people is huge. So whether that is your partner or your best friend or your mom or your sister or a financial therapist or whomever can support you in this new journey because it's a big change to all of a sudden be kind of flippant with your money to really intentional with your money and to have people along the journey be like, yes, I'm on your team. I want to help you and support you in that. Don't be afraid to have your support people, established, called out, talk to them about this new journey that you want to enter on and embark on is really big. Also, we need to start recognizing like really what it is that we are telling ourselves. I actually was on a call earlier today and the woman was like, I reject money. I know that as soon as I get paid, I feel like I need to spend it because I actually feel more safe not having money. And it's because in her youth, she didn't have money. She was used to scarcity. That's where she lives. She's like comfortable in that chaos. And so we need to start practicing what it feels like to have money. And this is actually something I really commonly see, or a money script that I hear is if you're rich, you're greedy. If you're rich, you're a bad person. And so because that is so deeply internalized, we start deciding that like, well, I don't want to be a rich person. I don't want to be a millionaire because that makes me greedy and that makes me bad. And the truth is that's just not true, right? Like money is a magnifier. Money is an amplifier. So if you are a generous, kind human being, guess what? If you're rich, you also will still be a generous, kind human being. We need to start recognizing some of those scripts and some of those stories we're telling ourselves to make sure we can start reframing them.
That's true. That's great advice. When it comes to setting financial boundaries, how can people start to set financial boundaries, whether it's personal and relationships or professional?
Great question. One of the things that comes to mind is borrowing. I hear a lot of stories about people who feel like they need to give their parents money, their siblings money, they need to support somebody in their life. And the truth is, what we need to do is practice that oxygen mask first, finances, where you need to put the mask on yourself first, make sure yours is fully secured before you can help other people. Transparently, it is a difficult thing to do when you are used to being the generous human being who wants to help and save everyone and pick up the pieces. If you're not supporting yourself, you're actually not being the best version of who you can be, and you're not supporting others in the best way either. So really turning inward and saying, okay, what do I need to feel safe and secure? And then there is that abundance, right? Then if there is extra money that you are able to be generous with, please do. That's an awesome thing to do. And then you can start deciding, what do those numbers really look like? What can you give and still be financially supported yourself? I have a rule for our household. is if somebody in our life needs money, they come and they ask us about it, then we will do an evaluation of what we can help with, what we can provide. It's a gift. We are never going to borrow family money or friends money because I don't want this dynamic, this relationship to be impacted by, okay, well, weird. I gave you $500 and you told me you needed to pay for groceries. And yet I see that you're on a vacation or a girls' night out and you're having a ton of drinks. And now I'm judging you for the choices that you're making with the money that I gave you or borrowed you, right? It feels kind of icky. And so we just have a hard and fast rule that if that circumstance were to arise, that we will make sure that it is a gift, and however you choose to spend it is, your choice, your prerogative. We've done what we could from a monetary standpoint to help. So I think, putting in place some of those boundaries can be really important.
I really like how you use the example of put the oxygen mask on yourself first and then help others. It's kind of like when you're traveling by airplane and they go through the safety procedures and they say, put your safety mask on first and then others. I really like that example. Can you explain to us some common habits of financially healthy individuals?
Oh, yeah. These are my favorite. I think of everything as like on this continuum of, right, you are in a relationship with money. You need to start understanding what that relationship is. Is it on the more toxic side or is it on the healthy side? Just like with any other relationship that you have in your life, whether it's a friendship, an intimate partner relationship, all of these relationships fall on that continuum. When you can start establishing, yeah, I'm actually feeling like money has a real big hold over me. I don't feel in control of my money. You're maybe more on that toxic side of the spectrum. But for the people that are more in like the healthy side of it, one, they are likely having money dates, right? Like they are taking intentional time to look at their money. I do this, for example, every Tuesday morning. I have a 20-minute money date with myself where I'm just looking at the income, I'm looking at the expenses. It literally maybe takes me 20 minutes, but I have set aside time on my calendar to know that that money date is happening. I am nurturing that relationship. I come away from it feeling in control and at ease and whatever. And then my money is also being respected because I have a plan for it. So I think that is one really healthy way to start looking at your money. I also think that you're just able to like talk about money in a relatively healthy way. And this doesn't need to be like braggadocious or like, I make X amount of money a year. Like that's icky, right? But just being able to be like open and transparent with other people about like how you are feeling about money or things that you have experienced that have been working really well, or even just approaching money conversations with curiosity and openness is a sign that you're like on the trajectory towards a healthy relationship. And I think that's a really great place to start.
I think that's a really great place to start is having those money dates instead of being avoidant of it. Like you said, it takes 20 minutes once a week. It doesn't take that long. If we start to take 20 minutes once a week, it can also improve it really well. Why do people feel guilt or shame around money and how can they overcome it?
It goes back to we were never really taught about money. And then the day you turn 18, everyone's like, okay, well, now you should know how it works. You just wave that magic wand and all of a sudden you should know. In reality, we know that is not how it goes, but that's kind of the message that we're receiving. Oh, we start placing this shame on ourselves. It's self-induced in many ways, right? Of like, well, I should know this. And then we have the, luxury of social media connecting us to all these people, which can be great in some aspects. And in other aspects, we see other people and we start comparing ourselves to them. And we start seeing our sisters, best friends, cousins, roommate who's doing this elaborate vacation. And you're like, well, if she's doing it, I should be able to do it. And because I'm not doing it, I'm less than, I'm bad, I'm despicable, whatever. And so we have this shame box that we keep shoving things into. And shame loves darkness. We love to let that shame grow and fester and do its thing in this box. And until we really start opening that box and peeking into that box and letting some light into whatever is happening in our financial lives, it's just going to continue to grow and grow and grow. So in order to stop that shame spiral, it really just requires looking at the numbers, actively seeing what is going on. And then again, that goes back to call me, find somebody like me. And if I'm not the right fit for you, understandably so, but then who are your support people who can help lift you out of that shame? Because I can promise you, you are not alone in this, even though it feels like you are.
Yeah. Wow. Can you walk us through what a typical financial therapy session would look like and how you would go about it? I know you were saying that first it starts with once a week and then it goes to biweekly, but what would a one-on-one session typically look like?
For my services specifically, I always start with a consultation. They're free to make sure that like we're the right fit and I can be the right person for your support team. If you're like, "Yes, we like it. Let's do it." We start with an 80-minute session. If you're familiar with therapy, that's typically what's called like a diagnostic assessment where you're really going in and like getting the whole picture of your life. And that's what I'm doing, but without the diagnosing, right? And so we're talking about excuse me, we're talking about your presenting problem. Like, walk me through how you're making purchasing decisions. Tell me more about how money is flowing through your household. What are the account structures looking like, right? And then we go back and we talk a little bit about how you grew up around money. Like I said before, it's an important piece, but we don't sit there super long. But I want you to give me kind of the time frame of your life. What are some of the messages that you received growing up? And then we move into your goals. And that's usually what that first session looks like. And in fact, that goal work is typically homework. I assign a lot of homework to my clients because 1 hour a week isn't really going to move the needle too much. You need to be doing stuff outside too. And so you set those goals. I call them your North Stars because once we have some clarity and a visual for what we actually see our lives looking like, we use those as our guiding lights to make purchasing decisions, to make saving decisions, to set up your accounts, all of those types of things. Um, and then we really get into the numbers. So that 80-minute session is first, but after that, then I see people for an hour and 50 minutes. And at that point, we're really looking at the numbers. I have what's called an intentional spending planner that I built out, and I help my clients understand what it looks like, and they can start plugging in their numbers. It's literally available on Etsy for like $10. They can, I give it, if you work with me, you just get that. But people who are just listening, who are like interested in dabbling and getting themselves out of that shame box can find that on Etsy. We really start moving through the numbers and like, okay, what is your debt load looking like? How do we want to structure your fixed costs and your variable costs and all these different things? We go session to session and we take it from there and we start laying the groundwork and those stepping stones for getting you out of debt or for breaking that debt cycle or for stopping avoiding money, because I'm there to support you in looking at your money and have it not be such an overwhelming thing. And that's kind of what it looks like. And we just keep doing that until we're evaluating constantly throughout the process. And how are you feeling? Do you want to go to 2 weeks or a month? And does that feel good for you? And that's kind of what the relationship looks like.
That's incredible. Thank you for walking us through that. Going back to the topic of communication, how can couples improve communication about finances and avoid money related conflicts?
What I find with couples and fighting about money is it's less about the actual money. It's more about our priorities. If one partner is spending money in accordance to maybe their values, but the other partner doesn't value that, I'll give you an example. My husband and I mean, years ago at this point, but we did get in a couple fights about money because he was working in corporate America. He had a cafeteria at his disposal. Like he could go down and go get whatever he wanted for lunch. Meanwhile, I was a new stay-at-home mom. I mean, this was literally 4 years ago. I was looking at our statements and things, and I was like, he's going to lunch fairly often in the cafeteria, right? And I started feeling like this resentment because I was like, well, I am home with a baby in a pandemic. I am not going to lunch all the time, right? And yet he gets to go to lunch. And so I felt like that was a really unfair thing that was happening. And could I have just door dashed lunch more frequently to myself? Yes. But that didn't really feel aligned with like the values that I carried, right? Like I didn't want to be door dashing lunch. I wanted us to be saving money so we could be doing other things like taking family vacations or whatever. And so we just had a really candid conversation. And I said, look, I don't think this feels really fair. It doesn't feel equitable. And he understood where I was coming from. And he was like, yeah, I can understand how that's, problematic. And so we ended up changing our account structures so that our income was all going into our joint checking account. We had one joint checking account where our bills and our groceries and all that was paid out of. But then we had an agreed upon individual checking account number that we each had accounts. And, I don't remember what it was back then, but say it was like $400 a month or something, where we could each spend up to $400 a month on whatever we wanted, shame-free, didn't matter. So he could go to as many lunches as, that meant. And for me, I could go get Starbucks and not feel guilty about it, or I could go get a massage and not feel guilty about it. And it didn't feel like we were taking money from our joint account, and it wasn't equitable, right? It just created this dynamic where, like, okay, we have autonomy, we have responsibility, and we get to play to whatever it is that we want to play to. And that changed so much for us, just having like these little tips and tricks of how we can move through the world a little bit more graciously, with a little bit more empathy, with a little bit more understanding, can really change the game. Now, that's to say, I mean, of course, there are far more deep-seated issues that can come up when it comes to, equitability and being on the same page with your partner. But I think a lot of it actually is relatively easy fixes that we just don't know these things because, again, we were never taught it.
I think those are really great tips and really great pointers. I can see how if he was constantly going out to eat, well, not honestly out to eat, but just like grabbing a coffee or a bite to eat at the office, and you're staying at home and you're not doing that, and it's still coming from that joint account, I can see where the conflict can happen. I was in a similar situation as well with my ex that I was living with. We had a joint account, and he was going out to eat while on his lunch breaks as well, and I wasn't while I was in school. And I can see where the conflict can happen, because then it's just like it's better to have a joint account, like you said, and then two separate for personal. I like those tips a lot. How do you recommend parents to teach their children about money to build a positive financial mindset?
Ooh, I love this question. I love talking about money in front of my kids, probably more so than I don't actually not more so than I should, but definitely just having that open conversation, because I really want my kids to understand that money is not a bad thing. Money can be talked about in a really positive light. And so there's so much here. It could be an entire episode on its own, but I'll try and kind of keep it concise. For starters, we do family meetings, and my kids, for context, are 2 and 4. Like, they are babies still. But when we have these big family financial decisions, I want them to feel like their opinion matters. I want them to feel included. And frankly, I want to kind of get this down while they're young. So then when they are 10, 12, 14, 18, they know that they can be an advocate for themselves. They feel like they have a voice in big decisions and that their opinion matters. We did this when my husband retired in September, which we're really excited about. And so he's now home hanging with the babes while I do my financial therapy thing, and it's amazing. But we knew that that was a huge income source that we were going to be losing, right? Like, we were choosing to walk away from that. And so that meant there were going to be some changes happening. We weren't going to be going to restaurants as frequently. We weren't going to be going and spending our money as willy-nilly as we had been able to for a while. And so we had a family meeting about it. And we start with those gratitudes, right? We have a talking stick and we talk about things that we're excited about. And then we said, mommy and daddy have been talking about daddy leaving work. And that's what, it would mean that you get to see daddy a lot more, which is amazing. But also, we're not going to be getting as many cheeseburgers from your favorite restaurant. At the time, my son was 1, so he was just like happy to be alive and chilling. But my daughter was really engaged, really present in the conversation. And she was like, yay, daddy is the best. Like, she was so excited that she was going to have more time with her daddy. And it was so impactful and so powerful for us, because there's going to be times where we are making big decisions, whether it's we're going to move or we're going to, I don't know, maybe daddy's going to have to go back to work at something. Like, I don't know what that's going to look like. but I want them to feel valued. It all comes back to we are going to prioritize things a little bit differently. Now we're prioritizing daddy being home instead of having the convenience of going to restaurants as frequently as we were. That's just one example of things you can do, but I really think modeling anything for your kids is so important. And so if you genuinely are not having those positive conversations with your partner in front of your kids, or even if you internally feel like icky about money, or you're having this like cognitive dissonance about money, it's really important to recognize that, kind of seek the help that you need. And you can be open with your kids about this, whether they're 4 or 14. You can say, like, mommy never really learned about money that much, and I'm wanting to change that. So I'm going to start this whole financial self-care journey. Do you want to come along for the ride with me? And they are going to be pumped about it. I can almost guarantee they will be really excited for that and to learn along the way. And our kids appreciate that vulnerability, that openness. And so let them in on some of that.
I think that's incredible. It doesn't really matter how old they are. Obviously, if they're anything younger than 2, then it probably wouldn't make sense at that time. But like 2, 3, 4, 10, I think it's a great place to start so they can start being aware that it's okay to talk about money as well. Because a lot of times growing up, the topics that you don't talk about are money, politics, and religions is something that just needs to be normalized more, especially into kids. Is it's okay to talk about money.
Oh, yeah. And we started actually implementing allowance with my 4-year-old. We initially were going to wait till she's 5, but she's very responsible. She's very inquisitive. We just attuned to her personality and we had a chat with her and we said, look, baby, money is a big responsibility. Do you think you're ready for it? And she was like, oh, yeah, I'm totally ready. Like, she was so excited. I was really, again, intentional about how I wanted to show up with her and have allowance be a really consistent thing. We did things preemptively and proactively, and I got $200 worth of $1 bills because she doesn't understand that a $5 bill is bigger than a $1 bill, so she would rather have two $1 bills than one $5 bill. I got a money box off of Facebook Marketplace for like $5, and we got her a wallet and a purse and a little container to put all of her allowance in. And every Wednesday, she knows, like, we do allowance. She gets 4 $1 bills. She has an investment box. She has a give box. She has a save box. She has a spend box, and she puts $1 in each. After several weeks of doing this, I asked her, I was like, do you want to buy anything? You have money now to buy your own toys or whatever it is that you want. And she wanted this Aurora Barbie doll so badly, which we have never watched Sleeping Beauty, and yet she's obsessed with her. And this wasn't like let's go up to the store. Mommy needs to grab some things and you can get your thing as well. This was very intentional time for her. This was her space to do her very first purchase. And it was a special Mommy Kinsley time. And we went to the store. She put her spend money in her wallet, in her purse. We went to the toy aisle. She looked through everything. She found her Aurora doll. And we went to the cash register and she got the money out and she counted her ones for the amount. And it was a big experience for her. And now she is so proud and delighted to carry around that doll with her. And that's what I want her to learn. And of course, she is going to make mistakes along the way, but I want her to make those $50 mistakes now rather than make $50,000 mistakes later on in life because she was never taught anything.
Absolutely. I think that's such a beautiful thing. So, how can financial therapy help someone align their financial goals with their personal values?
Ooh, this is a good question. I mean, it goes back to that intentionality, right? Everything that I do in my work comes back to intentionality and to your values and your priorities and identifying those things first and then making sure that we're practicing spending in accordance to that. And I say practicing very intentionally because if you have been mindlessly spending, haphazardly spending for a while, or just like fallen into the traps of American consumerism like we do, that's perfectly normal. Show yourself some compassion along the way. You're not going to go from not really knowing anything to knowing everything overnight. This is a journey. This is a process. But really having that intentionality back into your purchasing. And what I often tell people is when you can get clear on those guiding lights, on those North Stars of like what you really see for yourself, what you really value, what moves the needle for you, right? For me, it is connecting with my friends. This weekend, I am going on a girls' trip and I am happy to spend a ton of money on girls' trips because I love my friends. I love those relationships. I care about them just as I am happy to spend money on date nights with my husband or traveling with my kids or whatever it is, because that's in alignment with what I truly value. It makes not falling into the Target trap of, coming home with throw blankets and throw pillows and clothes and a new basket, because we always need baskets. It makes it easier to walk away from those things because I can stop and have impulse control and think to myself, do I really want to spend $100 on this stuff? Or do I want to put $100 away in my high yield savings account for the girls' trip that we're going to have in 6 months? That really means more. And that moves up that baseline level of happiness. When we're talking about aligning our priorities and everything, it boils down to practice and really knowing what it means for you. Because I could have listed all of those things and you could be like, none of that resonates for me. I actually only am solely focused on getting my Louis Vuitton purse. And I'm like, great. My job is never going to be to tell you what to buy. It's going to be to teach you how to buy things in an intentional and values-based way.
That's great advice. Thank you. What are some tips for creating a healthy balance between saving for the future and enjoying the present moment?
Oh, you have to have a sustainable plan, right? Like you cannot be like, not to name names, but the Dave Ramseys of the world who are like, never go get your lattes and stop eating avocado toast. You're like, okay, that's just stupid. Thank you, sir, but no. And so I think really, again, identifying what it is that like is going to make you feel happy. I love going and getting a latte out. I don't know why, but I just like it. It feels good. It tastes way better than what I make at home. I don't need that every day, but some days I am like, ugh, I am dragging. The kids were a lot this morning. I'm getting a latte and I get very happy because of that, right? And that is okay. But I think having a sustainable plan for how you are structuring everything, for how you're getting set up, and what I like to operate in on and how the intentional spending planner is set up is percentage based spending. So I have what's called the 60-10-10-20 rule of like your fixed costs or your must haves, if you will, should be about 60% of your total, of what you're spending of your net income, and then saving 10% in a high yield savings account, whether that's for an emergency fund or if that's fully funded, it might be a vacation fund or that Louis Vuitton we talked about, or whatever it is that you're saving for. 10% then is going to post-tax investing. So that might look like a Roth IRA or a brokerage account. This is assuming that you're already contributing into like a 401k, which is pre-tax investing, right? And then 20% gets to be spent on shame-free spending, whatever it is that moves the needle for you. Again, for me, it's those girls' trips or maybe a latte here or there or a massage that I enjoy. For my husband, it's getting duck decoys because he's a big hunter and that's what he likes, right? So identifying what it is for you, it's like those entertainment things, but you should spend money. That is a good thing to do. You're making it, you're earning it. That's right. And I want you saving for the future and doing so in a structured way.
Wow. Thank you for sharing all of that. This has been so incredible, and I'm super thankful I've gotten the opportunity to chat with you. And I know this is going to help a lot of people. So tell us, where can people find you? Where can they support you?
Yeah, thank you for asking. So I am financial therapist Lindsey on Instagram. I am not on TikTok. I probably should be, but whatever. So come find me on Instagram. And I am a solopreneur. So it is me in my DMs responding to you. I don't have like a VA that's pretending to be me. Also, my podcast is Financial Self Care with financial therapist Lindsey. Listen to that. It's really great free content. And then my website is financialselfcareblog.com. And you can find my entire, financial therapy page on there, my contact info. But if you want to just let me know that you came and listened to this episode and what you thought of it or whatever, start the conversation. I love connecting with people. That's where you can find me.
Amazing. Thank you. I'll have all of your links where people can stay in touch with you in the show notes below. Thank you again, Lindsey.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for tuning into another episode of Nourished Inside Out. I'm so thankful that you're here. Your support means so much, and I'm so excited to bring to you our very first Nourished Inside Out live virtual summit on April 26th and 27th. We have an incredible lineup of speakers, and pre-sale for tickets will be for a limited time. You can find the link in the show notes below for more information. See you there, and as always, keep growing and thriving.